My name is Verena Kensington, and 8 months ago, I buried my 16-year-old daughter, Camilla. If you had walked into St. Mary's Chapel that morning, you would have seen a room overflowing with people: neighbors, classmates, my parents, my sister Amanda, Uncle Tommy, Aunt Linda. You would have seen tears, trembling hands clutching tissues, sympathetic glances cast my way like fragile offerings. And maybe you would have thought, Verena has a big family. She won't go through this alone. But funerals have a way of tricking you. They fill the first chapter with warm promises that don't survive into the second. Because as days turned into weeks, the phone calls stopped. The visits faded. The concerned texts became ghosts I could scroll past without feeling anything. Everyone vanished, except one person. A lanky 17-year-old boy with gentle eyes and a quiet loyalty I never expected. Jake Morrison, Camilla's best friend. Camilla had been fighting leukemia for 2.5 years. Her world became Denver Children's Hospital. White walls, humming machines, those awful chair beds I tried to sleep in but never could. My entire universe shrank to IV poles, treatment schedules, and the sound of my daughter's breathing at night. And during all of that, every weekend, every setback, every milestone, it wasn't my family who stood beside us. It was Jake. Mrs. Kensington, I brought her the new Moon Knight comics, he would say as he slipped into the room, backpack half unzipped, cheeks red from the cold. He'd pull a chair next to Camilla's bed, leaning in so she could see the illustrations even on her worst days. There were times Camilla was barely conscious from chemo, her eyelids fluttering like paper wings, and I'd whisper, Jake, sweetheart, you didn't have to drive all the way from Boulder today. Yes, I did, he always answered, adjusting the soft pink blanket Camilla adored. She's counting on me. While my family found reasons not to visit, work is hectic. The hospital makes me anxious. It's just too hard to see her like that. This boy never missed a weekend. Not one. I saw grandparents camping out in the family lounge, cousins taking shifts, entire extended families rotating through like a well-oiled support machine. But for us, it was just me and Jake. One late November evening, as soft snowflakes fell outside Camilla's window, the heart monitor's rhythmic beeping filled the silence. I was brushing strands of thin hair from my daughter's forehead when she whispered, Mom? Her voice was so faint I thought I imagined it. I leaned closer. What is it, my love? Promise me something. My chest tightened. Camilla had been having more of these quiet, heavy conversations, moments when a child seemed older than her own body. Moments that made me want to shatter into pieces because I could feel her slipping away. Anything, I whispered. If something happens to me, give Jake my college money. A coldness swept through me, deeper than the hospital's sterile air. Camilla, sweetheart, don't say that. You're going to beat this, remember? Stanford, computer science. You were already looking at dorms. She opened her eyes, those same bright hazel eyes that used to sparkle with mischief when she was little, now dimmed by medication. Please look at me, Mom. I forced myself to meet her gaze. Jake comes here every weekend, she said slowly. He drives 2 hours in that old Honda even when he's exhausted. When I'm scared at night, he sends me voice notes so I don't feel alone. When the kids at school treated me different after I lost my hair, he made sure I never sat by myself. Her breath hitched. He works at Home Depot to help his mom pay rent. College isn't even something he thinks he'll get to do. A tired smile tugged at her lips. But he's brilliant, Mom. He helped me with calculus when I couldn't focus. He deserves a chance, more than any of our family would ever care to give him. The machines hummed their steady lullaby. Somewhere down the pediatric hallway, a Christmas melody drifted faintly through the speakers. Mom, promise me. My throat burned. I didn't want to imagine a world without her. Didn't want to make promises built on the possibility of losing her. But she was looking at me with such certainty. I promise, I whispered, kissing her forehead. But you're going to be here to see Jake get into college. You'll help him study. She gave me that familiar crooked grin, the one she'd worn since she was 2 years old. I know, Mom, but just in case. 3 weeks later, on a quiet Tuesday morning, just before Christmas, Camilla died in her sleep. Jake was holding her hand when she took her last breath. I was holding the other. Her favorite song, Don't Stop Believin', played softly from Jake's phone because he knew, better than anyone, that it gave her comfort. After the funeral, I expected Jake to fade into his grief, to disappear like everyone else. Instead, on Thursday afternoon, he knocked on my door in Lakewood. He stood there in the winter cold, shoulders trembling, eyes swollen from crying, clutching a casserole dish, like it was the last thing keeping him upright. I just wanted to check on you, Mrs. Kensington, he said softly. My mom made tuna noodle casserole. She thought maybe you didn't eat today. I blinked hard. The kid looked so lost. He was wearing Camilla's faded purple hoodie, the one she insisted he take from the hospital. You didn't have to come, I whispered. You're hurting too. Yes, he murmured, but you're all I have left of her. Something inside me cracked. Come in, sweetheart. I'll make hot chocolate. Camilla always made you that, didn't she? Jake shuffled inside. Actually, I brought something else. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small handcrafted wooden box, smooth, mahogany-stained, with polished brass hinges. I made this in shop class for Camilla. I was going to give it to her for Christmas, but now I want you to have it. My heart clenched. Inside were Camilla's first hospital bracelet, a photo of the two kids laughing at Red Rocks Amphitheater, a handwritten note. Thanks for being the best friend a girl could ask for. See you on the other side. That was the night Jake became the last piece of Camilla I had left. And the first night I realized my own family had abandoned me long before my daughter ever took her final breath. If grief has stages, mine didn't follow them. It came in waves, shallow 1 minute, drowning the next. And every Thursday, without fail, Jake appeared at my door like some gentle reminder that I wasn't completely alone. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't bring flowers or force conversation. Sometimes he didn't even knock loudly. Just a soft tap, like he was afraid to intrude. But he always came back. One evening in late January, the sun was sinking behind the rooftops, casting a dull orange glow over the snow-covered street. I heard the familiar knock and opened the door to find him standing there with red cheeks, a backpack slung awkwardly over his shoulder. Hi, Mrs. Kensington, he said, almost shyly. I brought chili this time. My mom says it freezes well. I stepped aside to let him in. You know you don't have to bring food every week, I told him gently. He shrugged. I like cooking with my mom, and you always fed me at the hospital. Feels fair. But it wasn't fairness. It was loyalty. Pure, unwavering, undeserved loyalty. He set the container on my counter before glancing around the kitchen. Camilla used to sit at that same island stool, legs swinging while she worked through algebra problems or doodled characters for the video game she and Jake had started creating together. Sometimes I still caught myself expecting her to be there, leaning forward with that bright, curious spark in her eyes. Want some hot chocolate? I asked, because offering it had become our ritual. Jake nodded. 3 sugar packets and just a splash of cream. I smiled faintly. Exactly how she made it. He sat at the table, hands wrapped around the mug like he was trying to warm something deeper than his fingers. His hair fell over his forehead, and for a moment, he looked impossibly young. 17 shouldn't look so tired. How's school? I asked. Jake let out a soft, humorless laugh. Same as before. Teachers try to be gentle with me now, and everyone whispers, like grief makes you contagious. I understood that feeling too well. He hesitated, then added, I picked up extra shifts at the Home Depot on Wadsworth. Mom couldn't cover rent on her own last month. I blinked. You're working that much? Yeah, it's no big deal. Of course it was a big deal. He was a kid carrying weights grown adults couldn't shoulder. While my family fabricated excuses to stay away from a dying teenager, Jake was juggling grief, work, school, and still showing up at my door every Thursday. What about college? I asked carefully. Jake stared into his mug as if searching for answers in the swirl of cooling chocolate. Not really an option, he said quietly. Mom's basically drowning, and I can't leave her alone. I figure maybe someday, but not now. His voice didn't hold bitterness. That somehow made it hurt more. What would you study if you could? I asked. Something flickered across his face. Hope, maybe. A shy spark, quickly buried. Computer engineering, he said. Or game design. Camilla and I were working on our own game. She was writing the story, and I was building the mechanics. We called it Quantum Heroes. He pulled out his phone and showed me sketches. Vibrant characters Camilla had drawn, level layouts, little animations Jake had coded. Each image felt like a punch and a gift at the same time. She always said I was going to be the next Steve Jobs, he whispered. She believed in me more than anyone. I could barely keep my voice steady. She wasn't wrong. And that was when the promise, that impossible, painful promise I made in a hospital room, echoed through me. Give Jake my college money. $30,000 with Camilla's name on it. Money I had saved since the day she was born. Money I imagined would take her to Stanford, or MIT, or whatever world she dreamed of stepping into. But she wasn't here anymore. And Jake Jake was the only person who had stood beside her without ever being asked. After he left that night, I sat alone in the dim kitchen, tracing the edges of the wooden box he'd given me. Every object inside felt like a tiny museum of Camilla's life. Her handwriting, her bracelet, her smile frozen in a photo where she looked weightless and free. I whispered into the silence, "Camilla, sweetheart, I don't know if I'm strong enough to do this." But I already knew the truth. My daughter had seen something in Jake that none of us had fully understood until she was gone. The next morning I called him. "Jake," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "can you come by this weekend? There's something Camilla wanted you to have." He sounded confused, but agreed immediately. That Saturday, he arrived exactly on time, wearing the same hoodie I'd seen him in at the hospital. When he stepped inside, he paused, noticing the wooden box sitting on the table. "Is that—" "Yes," I said softly. "Sit down, sweetheart." He lowered himself into the chair with rigid posture, like he sensed something important was about to happen. I took a slow breath. Camilla made me promise something before she passed. Jake froze, his eyes widened with grief and reverence. "She asked me to give you her college fund." His jaw tightened. "No, Mrs. Kensington, I can't accept that. I'm not asking you if you want it," I said gently but firmly. "I'm honoring your best friend. She believed you deserved a future, and I do too." He shook his head, trembling. "But that's $30,000. That's a fraction of what you gave her," I whispered. He stared down at his hands, and tears fell silently onto the table. He didn't sob. He didn't speak. He just folded inward, like someone who never allowed himself to break finally had permission to. "I don't know how to thank you," he whispered. "You don't need to," I said. "Just promise me you'll try. For her." He nodded, wiping his face. "I will. I swear I will." But the universe has a way of punishing good decisions. 2 days later, my sister Amanda invited me to a family dinner. She insisted it was just to catch up. But something in her voice, a too sweet tone, too carefully measured, made my stomach twist. They hadn't shown up for my daughter. They hadn't held her hand. They hadn't mourned with Jake and me. Yet suddenly they wanted to gather. And I didn't know it yet, but that dinner would ignite the kind of explosion no family walks away from, unchanged. Amanda's house in Highlands Ranch always looked like it belonged on the cover of a lifestyle magazine. Granite countertops, matching silverware, candles arranged so perfectly they could have been measured with a ruler. It was the kind of house where nothing was out of place, except, of course, the people who lived in it. When I arrived that evening, the smell of her pot roast filled the air, warm and deceptively comforting. My parents were already seated in the formal dining room, picking at their salads. Uncle Tommy was loudly recounting the Broncos' latest failure of a game. Aunt Linda smiled politely at everything, even when nothing warranted a smile. On the surface, it looked like a normal family dinner, but something felt wrong, too rehearsed, too expectant. "Verena," Amanda rushed over, air-kissing my cheek. "You look tired. Are you sleeping? You need to take better care of yourself." I forced out a tight smile. "I'm managing." "Well, you're here now," she said, patting my arm. "Let's eat. We've all been dying to talk to you." Dying to talk. Funny how death never made them appear until there was something they wanted. We took our seats. Conversation drifted from pot roast to work gossip to the weather. Surface-level chatter to cover an undercurrent of tension. I knew they weren't here to comfort me. I just didn't know how blatant they'd soon make it. Halfway through the meal, Uncle Tommy stabbed his fork into a piece of beef and grumbled, "You know, college these days costs an arm and a leg. My buddy's kid is looking at CU, and they want 40 grand a year. Outrageous." Amanda shot him a glance so obvious she might as well have elbowed him. Then she turned to me, smoothing her blonde hair, like she always did before delivering bad news wrapped in politeness. "So, Verena, we were wondering." She paused, delicate as a rattlesnake. "What are your plans for Camilla's college fund?" The room went silent. My mother set down her wineglass. My father leaned forward. Aunt Linda folded her hands like she was waiting for prayer to begin. I swallowed. "I'm giving it to Jake." A beat. Then Amanda's eyebrows nearly launched off her face. "Jake? As in, that boy who visited the hospital all the time?" "That's him." Mom's lips tightened. "Sweetheart, that money should stay in the family." Dad nodded. "Your nephew Brandon could use it. He's applying to business school." Uncle Tommy chimed in loudly. "You're talking about $30,000, Verena. That's not pocket change. Are you sure you're thinking clearly?" I placed my fork down slowly. "I'm thinking more clearly than I ever have." "Oh, come on," Amanda scoffed. "Brandon is your actual family, your blood. Jake is just some kid. Some kid. The words hit me like a slap. I looked around the table. This table where not one of them had ever sat beside my daughter as she vomited from chemo, where not one had held her hand through a panic attack, where not one had whispered, "You're not alone," even once. These last 2 years, I began, my voice trembling, not with weakness, but with restrained fury. Camilla went through hell, and where were all of you? Dad shifted uncomfortably. We were busy, Verena. Life doesn't stop. Life didn't stop for Jake either, I cut in. He showed up every weekend. He held her hand when the pain was unbearable. He's the one who kept her alive emotionally, long after her body started failing. Amanda rolled her eyes, speaking to me like I was a child. It's sweet he visited Verena, but good deeds don't entitle him to $30,000. No, I said, they don't, but love does. That threw them. They didn't expect me to say it so plainly. Mom leaned forward, voice softening manipulatively. Verena, darling, grief clouds judgment. You're thinking with your heart, not your mind. For once, I whispered, that's exactly what I should be doing. Amanda slapped her hand on the table, rattling the silverware. We are your family. That boy is nothing to us. I stared at her. That boy, I said quietly, was more family to Camilla than any of you ever were. The table exploded with noise. Accusations, defenses, denial, excuses. Their voices overlapped like a choir of guilt they refused to acknowledge. I didn't move. I let the storm rage. And when they finally fell silent, I stood. You want the money? I asked. They straightened, hopeful, hungry. Fine, I'll give it to you. Everyone froze, but only under one condition. A hush swept over the room. Even Uncle Tommy shut his mouth. Tell me about Camilla's last day. Blank stares. My mother blinked. Dad looked at Tommy. Amanda's face paled. I took a step closer. Tell me what she said, I whispered. Tell me what song was playing when she took her last breath. Amanda's voice cracked. Verena, You weren't there, I finished for her. Not for months, not for weeks, not for a single impossible moment. I waited. No one spoke, no one could. Slowly, I picked up my purse, slipped my coat over my shoulders, and walked toward the front door. Jake starts at Colorado State this fall, I said without turning around. When I told him about the fund, he cried, not because of the money, but because someone believed he deserved a future. Mom's voice trembled. You'll regret this. I gripped the doorknob and looked back at them, my blood relatives who had abandoned my daughter long before death did. The only thing I regret, I said, is that it took me this long to see what Camilla saw in Jake. Then I walked out, leaving them in the quiet, polished cage they called a home. And for the first time since Camilla died, the air outside felt breathable. 3 weeks later, I stood in a small dorm room at Colorado State University, watching Jake unpack his life one item at a time. The walls were bare, the mattress uncovered, the desk empty, just a hollow space waiting to become someone's beginning. He lifted a box labeled electronics and set it gently beside the bed, trying to hide the excitement that kept flickering across his face like sunlight through blinds. You don't have to stay the whole time, Mrs. Kensington, he said, pushing his hair out of his eyes. I know you're busy. Busy. The word felt foreign now. My daughter is gone, I wanted to say. You're the only thing in my life that still feels alive. Instead, I touched the frame tucked under my arm. I brought something for your wall, I said softly. Jake turned, and the breath caught in his throat. It was one of the sketches Camilla made during her hospital stays. A fictional hero she'd designed for quantum heroes, tall and bright-eyed, with a messy grin that looked suspiciously like Jake's. He reached for it slowly, reverently. I didn't know she finished this. She didn't, I whispered. I found it in her notebook, but she got far enough that you'd know who she meant it for. Jake swallowed hard and nodded, blinking fast. He placed the sketch above his desk, smoothing the tape edges like it was something fragile that might break under the wrong touch. It looks perfect there, I said. Yeah, he murmured. It does. His new roommate, a cheerful kid from Grand Junction, entered carrying a stack of Rocky's posters. He glanced around the room, then at me. Hi, you must be Jake's mom. Jake stiffened. My heart jolted. He turned to me, hesitant, unsure, waiting to see how I'd respond. I swallowed the lump rising in my chest. I'm someone very proud of him. Jake's shoulders relaxed and something warm flickered behind his eyes. Not replacing Camilla, not filling the canyon she left behind, but something real, something new. After the roommate disappeared into the hallway again, Jake looked down at his shoes. I didn't correct him. he said quietly. You don't have to, I whispered. There was a long silence, thick with emotion neither of us knew how to name. Then he spoke again, barely above a whisper. Mrs. Kensington, Verena, I don't know what I did to deserve any of this. I stepped closer and rested a hand on his shoulder. You showed up, I said. When my daughter was dying, when I was falling apart, when everyone else disappeared, you showed up. That counts for more than you know. He nodded, blinking back tears. I'll make you proud, he promised. I'll make her proud. You already have. We finished unpacking in comfortable quiet. When it was time to leave, Jake walked me to the parking lot. The evening sun stretched gold across the pavement, warm and soft, like Camilla's hand slipping into mine one more time. As I opened my car door, Jake spoke again. You know, I brought something too. He reached into his pocket and handed me a folded slip of paper. I opened it carefully. Inside was a drawing, Camilla and Jake sitting side by side on her hospital bed, laughing. Jake had drawn it himself. Underneath, he'd written, Families aren't always born. Sometimes they're chosen. Jay. My throat tightened. This is beautiful. It's true, he said. She chose me, and, if you'll let me, I choose you too. The words hit me harder than I expected. I nodded slowly, my voice trembling. I'd like that, Jake. I really would. He hugged me, awkwardly at first, then with a fierceness that surprised us both. It was a hug full of grief, gratitude, promises neither of us could fully articulate. And for the first time since Camilla died, I felt something warm replace the cold, aching emptiness. Hope. The next morning, as I was unpacking groceries in my quiet kitchen, my phone buzzed. A message from Amanda. Hope you don't regret that selfish decision. Don't come running back when you need family. A laughing emoji, as if cruelty were entertainment. I stared at the screen for only a moment before pressing delete. No reply, no second thought. They had abandoned me long before I ever chose Jake. And now, standing alone in my kitchen, sunlight creeping across the counter, I realized something Camilla had tried to teach me long before she died. Family is who walks beside you in the dark, not the ones who turn on the light only when it benefits them. Jake had shown up when it counted. Jake had stayed. Jake had earned every bit of Camilla's legacy, not through blood, but through love. As I closed my phone, an image flashed across my mind. Camilla's crooked grin, that mischievous spark she kept until the end. I could almost hear her voice. See, Mom, I told you Jake was special. A soft smile spread across my face. Yes, sweetheart, I whispered into the quiet room. I see it now. And for the first time in almost a year, peace settled into the hollow places inside me. Not perfect, not complete, but enough. Enough to start again,